We are back with Messy on Purpose, and I have Jason Smith here with me today. And he's going to do a little introduction on him. He's the first person I've had on here that is not in the United States, so it'll be a cool perspective from another part of the world. So, Jason, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little background?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, and thanks for that short introduction. And whilst I tried to justify as much as I possibly could a fantastic trip to Vegas, I just couldn't couldn't get there in the end. But yeah, so my name's Jason. I'm in England, just outside of London. I'm 55 years old, and during my late 40s, my life got very messy indeed, and my mental health, my physical health deteriorated massively, and yeah, life was a bit of a mess to say the least. But I kind of rescued myself by finding fitness, and since training myself and transforming myself both in terms of body and mind, I've now started a brand called FitInMidlife, which is to help other people who are in that stage of life and perhaps feeling the kind of pressures that we generally feel in that kind of life stage, take more control over their lives through fitness. And it's something that I've been doing for the last 3 years, and I just find incredibly satisfying seeing the changes that other people are able to make, having made my own.
That's so cool. Being able to help people, right? Like that, it's rewarding. So
It's
do you mostly help people like in England, or is this in person? Is this virtual? What is it that you help?
It's both. So quite obviously, the people that I help who I see in the flesh are in England and generally pretty local to it, to where I am. But I have an online training presence as well, which is through an app and through personal coaching online. And that spans the world, a lot in the USA, but also other continents, other countries. In fact, I operate in 6 of the 7 continents of the world. So, you could argue
Very cool.
quite a global reach.
Very cool. Very cool. So to kind of start off to figure out a little bit more about you and how you got to this point of helping others do the same thing you put yourself through. So were you into fitness in your like younger years, like in your like teens, 20s, 30s before the mess?
Kind of. During my teens, it was mostly related to team sports. So in England, we play soccer and cricket. Two sports that probably aren't that big, although I think soccer's growing in the US of A at the moment. But there was fitness related to that, but I wasn't exercising for the sake of getting, either stronger or healthier or fitter or increasing my endurance and my stamina. It was just part of the process of being, a football player, etc. But then as I transitioned from teens into my 20s, for a short while, I did hit the gym regularly. Motivation for that was, I'll freely admit it, all about attracting girls in nightclubs and looking good in
Every
shirts and
dude's goal in
t-shirts.
their 20s.
Yeah, well, we're all the same, I'm afraid. But that, and then around about 23, that kind of just tailed off, and from the age of 23 right up to pretty much my 50th birthday, I didn't do anything. Every now and again I'd think about it, and maybe I'd put my sneakers on and go out for a run, which generally didn't last that long because I wasn't fit enough. I didn't do anything at all. And yeah, other things obviously took priority. There was principally my career and my work. And I just made the excuse, I think, that I didn't have time for fitness. At the time, I would have absolutely believed that. But looking back now, I could have made the time. It was just not a priority for me, and I didn't really feel the need for it until really I reached a stage where I had to do something. So for a good 20, 25 years plus, I was living a life without any sort of health and fitness whatsoever.
Were you eating generally good, or was the eating off too as well? Like your nutrition was off?
The nutrition got worse as time went on. And that in part was because of different, kind of life events that happened, and most principally divorce. So when I was eating as part of a married couple, it was generally healthier at that point. But then once I was on my own, it was convenience. That was the only thing, that convenience and taste. And in the UK, at least, you can get these things that we call ready meals, which you just put in a microwave or in the oven for 5 or 10 minutes and they're done. And they taste pretty good, to be fair. But they're not the healthiest things that you can have. They're loaded with all kinds of additives, sugars and salts, etc. And, over time, as a result of that and drinking more alcohol, my weight really ballooned, as did my body. And as that happened, my health really deteriorated. So, there were two parts to it. The nutrition got worse, and the exercise became non-existent, unfortunately.
When you kind of found yourself, so like what was the life like? How did you? How should I word this? Sorry. So as you like went from like that happy good life where everything felt like it was pretty solid to kind of into the mess a little bit, what led up to that? Was that what led up to your divorce? Was there stuff before that? Was the divorce the reason that you kind of
No.
changed?
So by that point, I'd remarried. I'd got a son, and and that relationship is still going strong. The big change that occurred was that when my son was around 5, I was yearning to spend more time with him, and I had a good job. I traveled a lot. I traveled to the States a lot, as well
What'd you
as
do
South
for work?
America. So I was a chief marketing officer of a media business, and I used to travel across New York, Philadelphia, Houston on a regular basis, and then in South America down to Santiago in Chile and Buenos Aires, Argentina, Madrid in Spain. And I was just spending a lot of time away from my son, and I had a guilt complex about it, I suppose. And, I felt like I was just outsourcing parenthood and fatherhood to a paid nanny. And that just didn't sit right with me. As a child, my parents were both working class, and, they would work hard and they would work long hours. But they were always there for me, and I felt that I wasn't there for my son, and that just, it created a dissonance which really kind of burned inside. And the organization I worked for went through some structural changes, and I saw an opportunity to leave. And I thought, right, I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm going to leave with a decent severance package, and I'm going to spend more time with my son, James. And that was great. The timing of it was wonderful because it was just before summer. So, we had 8 weeks to spend summer together, and it was glorious. He was 5 at the time, and we went to all of these different places, did all of these things, and I loved life. And then when he went back to school, it kind of suddenly hit me, because I didn't know what to do with myself. And I realized that so much of my self-identity was wrapped up in my career and my job title that I literally didn't know who I was anymore. And I kind of felt worthless. And I knew that I didn't want to go back into that world of lots of travel, working long hours. But I thought, well, I've got to do something. So I started doing consulting for a while. And the reason I wanted to do consulting as an independent was I had the belief that would give me more control, particularly over my time. And, I would still be adding value to companies, and it would give me a sense of identity and purpose again. And it did. And I did that for a good 3 years or so. And then, the same kind of issues reared their head again. And I knew I wasn't enjoying this, and I was doing more than I wanted to, and I wasn't spending time with my son. And it just seemed to be that other people wanted me at the times when my son was available, i.e., during school holidays, etc. And so I kind of just let that drift. I didn't actually close the business. I just let it I stopped chasing new work, and I let the projects that I was working on finish off. I would hand them over to the client, and I wouldn't replace them. And then I kind of hit the bottom again, and that's when it really hit me. And that's when I started drinking more, I guess as a form of kind of self-help in some way, or it was a crutch for the way that I felt. And yeah, things kind of spiraled downhill quite quickly from that point. And it became a mess. It became a messy life, frankly. I mean, the one thing that I didn't allow to happen was for my son to be affected by any of that. So he was completely shielded, and I was the great happy dad for him. But deep down inside, I was in a mess. It's that's the best word I can find to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we all like kind of go through these like roller coasters, right? Of these ups and downs. And I feel like when people turn to alcohol, it just like immediately goes downhill.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of people, and I don't even think that's like just in the US, obviously. You're in England. That's all over the world. And
Yeah.
like, I feel like it's not referred to as a drug like it should be. Like, it's not much different than using other drugs as a coping mechanism. And I feel like
Absolutely.
it like kind of destroys society in a way.
Yeah, it does. It's a weird one, isn't it? And with me personally, the alcohol I drank was wine. It wasn't, I wasn't drinking a lot of beer. I wasn't drinking spirits, vodkas and or whiskies or whatever. It was wine. And in England, at least, there's something, there's a status attached to wine and drinking wine. It's a very kind of middle class thing to do. Any TV program or film that you watch, when the main character is coming home from work, the first thing they do is come in, they put the stuff down, they open the fridge, they get a bottle of wine out, and they pour themselves a glass. It's just so inbred in society, and very, very normal. And because of that, I certainly didn't class myself as an alcoholic. But I ended up drinking 2 or 3 bottles of wine a night on some nights, and that's quite a lot to consume.
That's a lot.
Exactly. But because it was wine, I didn't. No, I'm fine. If I was drinking a bottle of vodka every night, I'd probably have thought different about it. But there was something about wine that made it allowable, and it's and the wine that I drank was, it was pretty decent stuff. So it wasn't cheap either. But yeah, I just became, I went from using it as a self-medication to, I suppose, becoming dependent on it, and I remember distinctly, I would be thinking, right, James is going to go to bed at 7:30. I can open a bottle at 8, 2 hours to go. Well, and that was the kind of thinking that I would have, and I would look forward to it. And the sound of the cork coming out of the bottle and the sound of the first glugs going into the glass used to be, it used to give me a dopamine hit. And I would have an immediate feel good, and I'd have a glass of wine with my awful kind of food, and and at some point I would roll into bed, and it wasn't a great or healthy existence at all.
Well, and it's probably worse too doing it at home by yourself, right? Like
Yeah,
social
absolutely.
aspects, it feels more normal, but like when you're doing it at home by yourself, it's no longer a social thing. You're just drinking because you want to feel that way.
Yeah, exactly, and that's pretty much how it was. And I kind of I didn't really, for a long time, I didn't really find it weird. And then all of a sudden I did. I started to think there's something wrong with this. It's too much. I also had the impression that, pretty much everybody else I knew was doing something similar, if not the same. Maybe not to the same level of consumption, but, drinking 2 or 3 glasses maybe each night. And therefore, I kind of thought it was normal. But then I started to realize it wasn't. And that was, the compound effect of doing it night after night, and waking up day after day feeling slightly worse each time. And I realized that this was eventually, thankfully, I realized this is no way to live.
What do you think it was the turning point for that? So where was it that you just stopped and you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Well, there was a number of things. So, number one was, I suppose, my wife telling me, she wasn't shy in letting me know that she wasn't happy about what I was doing.
Did she drink like with you?
No, not
at all?
not really.
No.
No. She would drink socially, but not at home.
Okay.
So that was the first thing. But I think, like many people, when somebody is telling you to stop doing something, it almost makes you more determined to carry on. I absolutely believe if you want to change something like that, you have to do it for your own reasons, not for other people's reasons. And that therefore didn't really make that much difference. But then over time, I was getting older and I was feeling worse. And I started to get to the point where I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, Jason, you're approaching 50 now. You've probably got, 20 to 30 years left in you, decent years left in you. They're not going to be very decent if you carry on doing what you're doing, because, by this point I'd been diagnosed with hypertension, with fatty liver, with high cholesterol. I was also on antidepressants. And, I was thinking, well, this isn't, the film As Good as It Gets. I was thinking, maybe this is as good as it gets, as crap as I feel right now. Maybe this is the best I'm ever going to feel now. And that was, I suppose, the first wake up call. But then over time, I started to get inspiration from other places. So, my wife is a little bit older than me, so her 50th birthday fell before mine, and we went to a really nice hotel in Switzerland to celebrate her birthday. And there was a guy there who was in his 70s, and he was running wellness clinics for older men. And this guy was as fit as a fiddle. He was in his 70s and looked like maybe he was 50. Something like that, and acted that way as well. He had all of this energy in him, and I looked at him and I thought, geez, this guy's in his 70s, and yet he is looking and living better than me, and I'm not even 50 yet. And that kind of did two things. One, it was a little bit of a shock as to how I compared to him, but also it kind of gave me a role model example that I could follow. It kind of proved that you could be, well, healthy, happy, active, energized, well beyond the age of 50. And maybe actually, after all, this isn't as good as it gets. Maybe, I could change some things, and I could improve. And, so that was one of the key influences. But the biggest thing that really hit me was an Instagram post. So there was a guy called Dave, and he had decided to go sober on January the 1st. It was his New Year's resolution. And on the 21st of January in 2019, he posted this picture. And it was a still from the film of The Hobbit. And it showed the lead character, Bilbo Baggins, running through the Shire. And it had the words, "I'm going on an adventure" underneath. And the the character's face, the Hobbit's face, just had this big beaming smile and was full of energy and excitement. And for reasons still unbeknown to me, this thing hit me like a truck. It just stopped me in my tracks, and I just thought, that's how I want to live. And I remember, it was around 8:30 one Monday morning, and I just was staring at my phone whilst drinking a coffee, thinking, that's exactly how I want to feel. And then I read, the commentary that Dave had posted underneath the picture, and he was talking about how much better he felt having given up drinking, and he was talking about how he was going on his own adventure that day. And I thought, well, if he can do it, and it's only 3 weeks since he stopped drinking, then maybe I could do it as well. So I went onto Dave's page and looked at his other posts, and I saw that he'd read a book called The Unexpected Joy of Going Sober. And that kind of struck me as well, because the joy of going sober, a life without alcohol, for me, represented anything but, joy. It would, it'd be a dour, sober, dull life. And so I ordered the book and I read it on my Kindle. Over the course of 2 days, I just plowed my way through this book, and I just resolved at that point that I was going to change, and I decided that I wasn't going to drink again. I didn't throw any of the wine away from the house, interestingly, or hide it away. I just said, right, I'm not going to touch it, and I'm not going to buy any more. And I decided that I was going to go for a run, and so because this picture that I'd seen showed Bilbo running through the field. So I got my sneakers on and decided to go run through the local country. And, I'm lucky I live in a very nice green part of England, just outside of London. And whilst there wasn't much running involved because I wasn't fit enough, I just loved being out in the outdoors. And I felt just like this character. I was going on my adventure. And that was, really reinforced what that I wanted now. I wanted to be different. Before I didn't really want to. If I tried to make a change, I would always slip back because, maybe I'd go 7 or 8 days without drinking, or, sometimes weeks and months. But I'd always slip back because it's not what I wanted. But now I wanted it. I wanted something different. And it wasn't that I wanted to stop drinking. I wanted this life of fun, adventure, energy, and all of those things that had been missing, for a long, long time. And I kind of found that. And I, it was definitely messy because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But I just kind of thought, right, if I'm doing something and I'm feeling good doing it, then that's got to be good, hasn't it? And yeah, so that's how the change happened.
Isn't it something too? Like, there's something about being out in nature that makes you feel good. And when you shelter yourself for a long period of time, it's so noticeable on how much it brings good out.
Absolutely. It's and all kinds of nature as well. I mean, you're in Vegas in the middle of a desert, for example, but
right now is not a good time.
but you can find beauty in that. I mean, I've driven to Vegas from San Francisco through Yosemite, for example, and still found beauty as you're going through the deserts on the route in it, or on the way out, via Palm Springs and over to LA. It's, there's beauty everywhere if you're prepared to look for it.
Everywhere.
There really is.
Yeah. Here, right now it's just so hot, but I still go for walks in the morning with my dog at we go around 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Just because it's cooler out, but just even that alone, just getting outside, breathing fresh air, and it helps with the overall day.
I totally agree, and I think that there's something to be said for getting up early as well, and for kind of starting the day in that way. You're breathing the fresh air early before there's much traffic, etc., or people. You're seeing the sunrise, you're seeing the day break. That I think has an effect on us internally. Um, I think it just sets the day up so brilliantly if you can get out and enjoy whatever surroundings you're in, even if it's a cityscape. Um, at that kind of time of day, it's for me. There's no better way of starting the day that way.
Yeah, it's
That's me
nice.
talking now. 6 years ago, I would have still been in bed.
You never know though, like if you would have gotten up and did that, you might have started sooner.
Well, that's the
You know?
thing, and that is absolutely true, isn't it? Because you don't know what you don't know, and
Right.
a lot of the times, if you did just do something, and maybe even almost do it by accident, you just happen to wake up early, you can't get back to sleep, so you decide to get up and you go out and you think, oh, this is really nice. That's that. What a lovely surprise.
So it's just all about how you start your day, really. I love getting up. I've been taking the dog now that it's hot, like before the gym, then going to the gym, and then starting my day. And if I don't do that, it throws my whole day off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's for me, dogs as well, I think are great, but that's
Oh,
another big part of my life. But, for me, getting up early, getting outside with the dogs, and then the exercise part as well, whether that be outside or in the gym, it sets you up perfectly, doesn't it?
and I think what people miss too about working out is that it's so subjective, right? Like, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And like, you just got to find something you enjoy to make sure that you can be consistent.
You know what that is so true, and I think one of the big problems that I see with the fitness world, and particularly what you see from the fitness world in social media, is this specificity in terms of how you should do things and what you should do. But you're absolutely right. The only thing that is important is that you enjoy it, because if you enjoy it, you will do it, and if you do it, you'll get the benefit from it. If you don't enjoy it, at some point you're going to stop doing it, because
Yeah.
who keeps doing what they don't enjoy? Nobody. It's and so that for me is also the biggest thing. So since the day back in 2019 when I couldn't run, now I'm a regular runner, and I don't, well, I very rarely run on roads. It's always on trails through the country. And, I absolutely love that. But I know, and I will talk about, my passion for that until the cows come home. But yeah, I recognize that other people would prefer to swim, or to paddleboard or kayak, or to cycle, or whatever it might be. And whatever that preference is, if you're getting the same kind of benefits in terms of the exercise, the fresh air, the daylight, all of those aspects, then brilliant, go for it.
And if you don't like heavy cardio, a walk does just as good.
You know,
Like that's what's so great about it. There's so many
absolutely.
options.
Absolutely. And, for me, walking is the most underrated exercise. It's,
It really
I
is.
don't, I know we have this fixation with 10,000 steps, but, I don't think people really recognize the wider benefits of just getting out for a walk, in terms of what it does, not just for your physical health, but for your mental health as well. And
Oh
your
yeah.
emotional state, it just shifts you. And
It's
again,
nice.
you
Sorry, go
don't
ahead.
have to be in a beautiful place.
No,
Or as in, a beautiful kind of natural place. You can find beauty in a city or a town or a park, whatever it might be.
it's really just getting out and like kind of clearing your head sometimes, like I'll get overwhelmed with work and just need to go for a walk. It doesn't matter if I'm in the city or not. Like I just need to go, just let it just process, maybe not think for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have life's problems, don't we? And sometimes going out for a walk and just, well, actually, for me personally, every time I go out for a walk and just clear my head, I always come back feeling 10 times better.
Every time. And it's just something about, especially when it's outside. It's not the same like on a treadmill or something.
No, that's one thing that will never be explained to me. But why would you enjoy that?
Yeah,
Looking at
the
the
people
same
that
thing.
run on treadmills, I'm like, why?
Well, I can understand running on a treadmill if you want to, kind of pace yourself for a certain distance, and
Or if you're
because
training for something
exactly.
that,
But
yeah,
no, not for general fitness and enjoyment. No.
no, not a good time. I feel like there's other options,
Oh yeah,
but
definitely,
everybody has their thing.
absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Um, so as you kind of started changing everything, how long do you think it took you to, so you clearly got the change, like you felt like you wanted this, but how long did it really take you to get into routine and feel like fully good and, like, because a lot of people get into it and it's like, well, this sucks still. And, it's taking so long. And, they get discouraged very quickly and they're not necessarily falling in love with it yet. Because I do think it
Mm.
does take time as you're doing these things that you got to get that dopamine and, really feel good from it. And then you fall in love with it. But you fell in love with it. When and how did that happen?
So with the outdoor stuff, that was reasonably quick. So yes, I did get frustrated that I couldn't run as much as I wanted to, particularly given my inspiration was a small, fat, hairy hobbit. I'm thinking, well, I should be able to at least run through a field. Um, but at some point, and it was relatively early, I kind of decided to focus on what I had done rather than what I hadn't done. And so I started to think about, well, I managed to get a quarter of the way up that hill today. Whereas before I couldn't get, anywhere near, even a tenth of the way, before I had to start walking. And I focused on that, and that was a little achievement. And I think, yeah, that's really good. Well done, Jason. And I'd kind of, I would celebrate it in a way. And that really helped because, a quarter of the way ended up become a third of the way, and then half of the way, and then eventually I was able to run up the hill. And let me tell you, when that happened, the scene from Rocky when he runs up the steps in in Philadelphia. I was at the top of that. That was amazing. So that was just, I suppose that was easier because I just love being out. And if I was running or walking, and today if I go for a run, if I see something that I want to stop and look at, wildlife or a view of some sort, I'll stop and run and look at it. I'm not thinking, oh, what's this going to do for my for my split time or for my average pace, etc. I'm just thinking I'm want to be out here to enjoy it, so I will stop and enjoy it. The harder part was the gym because I hadn't been in a gym for a good approaching 30 years really, and you have kind of mental blocks about that because you think and actually one of the things you have to think is that now it would be 35 years ago. The gyms in the UK, at least 35 years ago, were they were full of serious bodybuilders. You didn't have your kind of gym chains that were very, that were more inclusive to a wider group of people. You were training in a place where the guys and the girls were there for serious intent and training very, very seriously. And so my impression of going to a gym again was that it's going to be full of people like that, and how am I going to get on? And they're just going to be laughing at me, and I'm going to get embarrassed. I'm going to make a fool of myself, and etc. etc. So
I think that's a pretty normal feeling. I think most people that are new to the gym have that everywhere.
Yeah. And I can totally understand that. But as soon as you walk through the door, you realize that there's all kinds of people in there, all ages, shapes, conditions, and level of experience, etc., etc. And the gym that I started going to was much more eclectic and I suppose welcoming than I ever thought that it would be. My fears were completely ill-founded. And so that was good. But the bit that was difficult was, well, what do I do now? I want to strengthen. I had this idea in my head that in order to make myself more energized, and I need to lose some weight and I need to build some muscle. That was essentially what I wanted to do. So the cardio, the running, particularly stroke walking, was to lose the weight, but then I wanted to get stronger through resistance training. But I didn't really, I could remember, what a basic bench press was and things like that. But a mixture of confidence and a little bit of uncertainty kind of limited, my performance in the gym. And so that really did take a longer period to work out. And
What did you do to like learn? So did you find someone in the gym that, kind of helped coach you, or did you find online resources? Like, how did you learn?
Well, I got the gym I had personal trainers there, and so I hired a personal trainer to give me. I ended up having 3 sessions with him, and he was in his early 20s, and I would say that his methods were appropriate for somebody in their early 20s, not somebody who was 50 and had all of the concerns, the confidence concerns, the capability concerns that I had. So him walking me up to a squat rack and loading a barbell up with weight plates, almost had me running for the door. Yeah, I did give it a go, but so I worked with him over 3 sessions, and despite what I've just said, I got some basic thoughts out of that. And then I thought about, well, I'm going to try and keep things simple. So I decided to only use dumbbells, and I decided to structure my exercises into supersets, trisets, giant sets, in order to get my heart rate up. Because at this point in time, I had a lot of fat to burn, and I had a lot of weight to lose. So in my head, I had this idea that if I was working my muscles, but over a prolonged period, so that my heart rate got up and my heart rate was reaching fat burn, cardiovascular, or more intense zones, then I'm going to have the benefit of the stronger muscle. I'm going to have the benefit of the fat burn at the same time. And that's what I did. So I would set myself up with a bench and a few dumbbells, and I wouldn't do the squats with the squat rack. I'd do goblet squats with a dumbbell, and I would do bench presses, then I would do rows, and then I would do something like lunges, and I would structure the workouts so that each exercise followed the other, and then I would rest at the end of it. And actually, I learned to enjoy that. It was I treated it as a challenge. It was progressive overload obviously is very, very important in terms of building your strength. So each time I was able to do an extra rep, or when I was able to use a heavier dumbbell for one of the exercises, again, I really celebrated that. It was a little bit like acting like Rocky at the top of the hill. What was really interesting was that everybody else in the gym thought I was mad.
Because you got your 10 exercises and you're doing a circuit, and they're like, what is he doing?
Exactly. It's like, what the hell is he doing? And why is he killing himself like that? But the end result was that, the fat burn happened really, really quickly. The strength started to improve. It took a couple of weeks or more to get kind of used to what I was doing. And then as soon as I'd kind of got everything worked out in terms of the technique, the progression was relatively quick, which is often the case, with when you first start working out, because, the gains that you can get at that point are accelerated compared to, once you've already built a lot of muscle.
You're starting from zero, so it's easy to
Yeah, so
grow.
absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, you know, you yes, you feel it, and obviously, I was having rest days, etc. When I would go for a walk, um, or possibly a bit of a run, depending on how much leg work I'd done in between the weight sessions. But yeah, I just kind of I did what felt right and what I thought would work, and you know, subsequently. As I trained to become a certified personal trainer, you know, I discovered, well, yeah, this is a bona fide way of exercising. And if you look at what I was doing holistically, you know, it was a typical hybrid training approach, and that was, you know, that was incredibly effective for me. Um, but I do remember people kind of, you know, saying things to me like, oh, "What are you doing? And are you mad? Or are you training for something?" Or various other comments. But the one really distinct memory I have was I was doing single arm rows, kneeling on a bench, and I remember the first time when I was doing the row and I saw the veins in my arm for the first time. You know, because my body fat had reduced, so that I could now see the veins. I thought, wow. I could think that, and I remember thinking, "This is it. This is brilliant." You know, and I felt so good about that, and it was just one of those really nice feelings. You know, I knew that that my body was changing, and that I was you know, that I was obviously, you know, being composed differently now, less fat, more muscle.
It's an incredible feeling when you get to like see change because it's so
Oh
slow. I always recommend to
yes,
people, I was like, you have to take photos because you won't
oh,
see change, and there's change all the time, but you just
absolutely,
don't see it. And
absolutely.
it's pretty incredible when you feel that. The vein thing made me laugh because my husband seen like veins. I think it was in his calves, and he got super excited at one point. So
It
it's
is
just
honestly. It's for you know, it's just it's what you, because it's what you see. You know, it's what Arnold Schwarzenegger's got, etc. And it's,
oh,
you know, and Sylvester Stallone in the Rocky films as well. You know, it's like, oh, that's it. You know, that's I'm getting there.
I will say though, you mentioned like the bodybuilders and like thinking that what you're going into, and like now the gyms are a little different, especially like the big box gyms.
Mm.
But I actually really like bodybuilding gyms the most. I feel like the people are like much nicer, more helpful. I feel like they're more serious, so you don't have as many people messing around on their phone or whatever it might be. I actually really enjoy the bodybuilding gyms.
Well, I guess because there isn't, where I live, there isn't a typical bodybuilding gym. So the typical
Okay.
bodybuilders go to the gym that I use, along with the other people. And I agree, you know, they're the nicest people. They're
Oh yeah,
absolutely amazing, and they're
they
so
might look
supportive.
intimidating,
Oh,
but
totally, totally. They look like they're going to tear your head off, but
it,
but they're absolutely the nicest people that you, without exception, that I've met at the gym, and you know, so helpful, so supportive, and you know, I'm 55 now, and most of the guys that are like that at the gym I train, you know, perhaps the eldest is about 30, something like that. But you know, I'm one of the gang, and it's lovely to have that kind of relationship with these guys. I mean, they're twice the size of me, as at least, but you know,
been training a lot
I'm,
longer.
well, and yeah, and you know, they're probably different goals to what I have, but you know, the way they're so accepting and accommodating and friendly to me, I totally agree. They're great people, and as you say, you don't see them scrolling through social media in between sets and completely forgetting that other people might want to use that piece of kit.
That stuff drives me nuts.
Well, I think it does everyone.
um, yeah, it's cool because I think what it is like they're very healthy people, right? Obviously, if
Mm,
they're bodybuilding and they look the way they do, they have the discipline and the mindset to be able to do like keep their nutrition in check, keep their workouts in check, and work towards their goals. And if they're working towards their fitness goals, they're most likely working towards all their goals.
Yes.
whatever that might be, whether that's career related, family related, whatever it might be. And I
Yes.
think when people are in that frame of mind, they're typically nicer, they're typically like more genuine than people that have a little bit more of a mess going on. And I say that
Mm.
because I feel like when you have a mess going on, you don't realize sometimes you react to things in a way
Yeah.
that like you maybe shouldn't. And you can, it causes people to like, I guess, be rude in some situations. And maybe they didn't even realize they were doing that. But because they're so worked up in their head and not processing things well, it can be taken the wrong way by a lot of people. Whereas like somebody who's very goal oriented and already like kind of has their stuff where they should be. Now, granted, we do have the people that take a little too many roids, and you know, that might be another story, but
Yeah. Mm. But I agree, and I think that what you described when people have goals, and one of the biggest things that I didn't realize is how everything that I did from a fitness perspective just went into every area of my life. The discipline, the focus, all of those things, and the enjoyment as well.
yeah.
But when people have that kind of discipline and they have those kind of goals, they have a confidence inside of them, which
Oh yeah.
I think comes out through an aura that they express, and they're much more, they don't feel threatened. I think when people are in a messy place, they do feel more threatened, and their reactions therefore can be a little less appropriate, and can be upsetting or rude at times. And which is fine. I was a complete and utter mess. My
I've
route to
been there
getting out of that
myself.
was, we've all, and who
Yeah.
hasn't? Who
Yeah.
hasn't? That's the thing. And if you're lucky enough to have not been in a mess yet, you probably will be at some point. So
Or you just didn't recognize it was a mess, I guess, because I think we all
yeah,
have
maybe. Or
it.
denial, or denial.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that when you find that happy place, let's say, you exude a different aura to somebody who is in a more messy place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of that, I mean, we all grow up with different situations that lead into how we act in our adult lives, which can
Yes.
be can be fixed. I would there's nothing that can't be fixed. It's just how much you want to change, and it's what you want to do. And like things like alcohol and coping with that, or other drugs, whether that's
Mm.
pharmaceuticals or, others of
Yeah.
choice. And
Yes.
those lead you on a path, and if you don't get off of that path, it's just going to keep going and it's going to keep sinking. And helping people find fitness is a good start to head towards that better life. Whether they believe it or not, it is the gate to a better life.
I couldn't agree more. For me, it's the foundation of a good life in every respect, whether it be clearly your health, but also, your relationships, your family, your career, your business, whatever it might be. I think it does affect everything. I really do.
It's like you said, foundation, and we have to have a solid foundation to get anywhere else. I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
So is something that you noticed. So this is second wife, right?
Yeah, third actually.
Third wife. Okay, so you're with your third wife. You've been
Yeah.
married 2 times before.
Yes.
Since you have fixed your health and became more active and taking care of yourself, do you feel that your relationship is better this time around because of that? Do you think that could have
Oh,
helped previous?
yeah. I'm not sure about the previous relationships. I think in both cases, the reason why they didn't work was I was so focused on my career, and but that meant that I was absent quite a lot,
Right.
which it isn't a kind of great place for a husband to be.
Right.
With my third marriage, I think actually, if I think about it, half of the marriage I've been unfit, and half the marriage I've been fit. So I have a kind of comparison, and I can absolutely say that the changes that I've made have helped in every aspect of my relationship with my wife. It's just so much better because, you know, if you think about how I felt when, you know, I'd lost myself, I'd lost my identity, you know, I felt worthless to her. And, you know, no man wants to feel like that at all, you know. And the fitness and everything that I've done through that has completely changed that situation. You know, I feel good about myself. I feel physically strong and mentally strong and emotionally strong now, and I feel like I can be there to be, you know, the kind of husband that I would want to be, rather than, you know, actually what you described earlier. You know, somebody who's a bit messy and perhaps not, you know, acting, behaving, or responding in the most appropriate way.
When you did the change, so since this happened with the third marriage, basically like half and half.
Yeah.
So did she kind of pick up these habits too? Does she go for runs with you? Does she go to the gym with you? Is this kind of a mutual thing?
We she is into her fitness, absolutely, and that has definitely increased. I wouldn't necessarily say as a result of what I've done, but, you know, it certainly coincides with that. Um, I do. We do work out together sometimes, but generally, yeah, she has a preference for things like bar, Pilates, etc. She's unable to run, unfortunately, because of a hip problem. So, you know, she does her thing and I do my thing. Is generally at the same time, but different things and sometimes in different places.
Do you guys ever, so you said you have dogs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever go for walks together, like walking the
Oh
dogs?
God, yeah, of
Yeah.
course, yeah, yeah,
I find that super helpful. Like, me and my husband do that like in the evenings typically. And like, it's a good
yes.
quality time activity that's also active. Like, you get out, like, you get to talk and kind of enjoy nature at the same time.
It's a great way of unwinding, and, you know, I'm lucky. I can't really say that I have a very, you know, a stressful life or a stressful job. I love what I do now, so, you know, no matter how busy I might be doing that, and I might sometimes be kind of, you know, in a bit of a mess and trying to think about, all right, well, I've got to do that, I've got to do this, I'm going to do that. You know, I couldn't really call it stress. You know, you certainly don't have any of the politics and that type of stuff that goes on in the corporate world. But it is a great way to just, you know, kind of connect together at the end of each day and spend some time together. I totally agree, you know, and, you know, in summer in England in particular, it's a great thing to do.
Is it pretty nice weather in the summertime there?
It's changeable. This
It's
we always, you know, we always think that it's worse than it actually is, you know. And this summer in particular has been very good. We've had, you know, we're right in the middle of a heat wave right now. But yeah, you know, it's the light that makes a difference. You know, particularly if you're out walking in, you know, in the country, in woods or forests, which we typically do. You need to be able to see where you're going.
Is it pretty cloudy there then, usually?
It, it can be. You know, I would say
Can
that,
be.
you know, we get far less rain than, you know, a lot of people outside of England would possibly expect. We definitely don't get as much fog as people expect. You know, you watch any film about London, and London's full of fog all the time. But for a long period, generally from around October through to about May, everything just seems grey. You know, you don't get it. It's cloudy. It's generally reasonably dry, but there's not so much sunshine. But during summer, we get a good spell of sun every year.
It's hard for me to live anywhere else but the desert now because I moved from the Midwest, which is like, I don't know how well you know these states, but you said Pennsylvania, so that's kind of close in that area.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the weather there just sucked, right? You barely seen the sun. I've go back home and like we'll be there for 5 days and not see the sun once. And like
Sure.
I see it every day here. Like if it's cloudy, I'm like, what is going on? And so like I don't know if I can be without the sun anymore.
Yeah, well, if you come to England, my recommendation would be to come around June time. June is always a good month.
Good to know. That matters. I always think of that when I'm gonna visit somewhere. It's like, how's the weather gonna be?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
um, okay, circling back. So
Yeah.
you did all of these changes. You said so what made you start working on your personal training certificate? And then like
Mm.
where did you start with that? Did you start working in the gym that you were working out at, or how did that work?
So the reason it came about was in part through the experience I had when I was working with a younger personal trainer. But there was one day, and again I can remember it very, very clearly. I was doing some shoulder presses, and there was a personal trainer with a lady in her 60s, I would say, early 60s, and she was doing a bench press, and the personal trainer was paying his client no attention whatsoever, not even counting her repetitions, because he was too busy chatting up a girl who was on the next bench, which, she was a nice girl. I don't blame him in many respects, but it did make me think. It did make me think that, this lady's paying for his time and his attention and his expertise, and, she should be getting a better service than what she's getting. And I then thought, well, wouldn't people who are my kind of age prefer to work with people who are my kind of age? And, when I looked into it, that wasn't typical for personal trainers. So I thought I'll become a personal trainer, and I'll specialize in people, working with people who are 40 or over, hence why my brand is Fit in Midlife. And the training that I did, separate too, but within the building of the gym that I was using, there was a company that provided teaching for gym certification and personal training certification, and so I signed up with them, and I treated that as my 50th birthday present to myself, and
Oh, very cool.
I did the courses. So that took around 7 months. But unfortunately for me, my timing wasn't brilliant, because just as I qualified as a personal trainer, COVID happened and everything closed down. so there I was with the qualifications, but nobody that I could actually serve. But in a way that helped, because I started putting some stuff on social media. In
And you
those
said you
days,
did marketing before, right? So you probably already had like a good level of how to market.
yeah, I mean, one thing that I should clarify though is that, I came out of work of that job in 2015, and in
Oh,
2015, Facebook had launched, but there was no such thing as TikTok or Instagram or
very
Snapchat
different.
or or anything
So you
like
had to
that.
learn
So
all of that again.
absolutely, I mean, I know the principles of marketing, but the actual the actual application through those media was something I had to relearn, absolutely. And so I started posting stuff on social media, and I did pick up some clients who, they used to be on, like us now, they would be on one side of the screen, I'd be on the other side of the screen, and I'd be watching them and talking them through their exercises. So, using Zoom. But that, I suppose, opened my eyes to the possibility of online coaching. And the big benefit of online coaching is that you're not constrained by locality. If you are training somebody in person, then it has to be within a reasonable distance for either the client or the coach to make that work and happen. But when the UK started to open up again, the clients that I had more locally that I was coaching using Zoom, I started to train them in their house when we could, and then ultimately when gyms opened up again, I did a deal with a different gym locally to me, where I would be a personal trainer at that gym, and I would be able to bring my clients in, and that's how it all started. And for a good 18 months, that's really all I focused on. It was training people in person, and I built up very quickly. I built up a good, sizable client base. The vast majority of whom I still train today, which is nice. And that was 4 years ago now.
So
Yeah.
are you doing that full time now?
So I'm doing training full time now. I try and limit how much I do face to face to
Right.
roughly 50% of my working day, although my working day can be quite long because of time differences. So I do my in-person training, which is roughly 50% of my time, and then I do my online training and build my app and post social media content, in the other 50% of my working day.
The social media content is so much work.
People don't realize that. It's, you sometimes get all the, you get, let's say, less than kind comments on a post that you've done, or a reel that you've posted. And you kind of read this comment and you think, if that person knew how much time I've put into, filming it, editing it, scripting it, editing it, and then, writing the commentary for it.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot. It's a lot more work than people would think. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, even just doing like the podcast stuff, like I cut it up. I use Opus, so I use AI to like cut up the clips, but then I got to go through all the clips, and then I got to post them all. But I have to,
yeah.
Like, it's so much work, and it's not even like that hard to edit. It's just.
I totally. I feel your pain. I experience it myself. It's and Opus is I've used that myself for clips that I've done with other podcasts, and it's in a way it's brilliant, but in another way it's like, here's 40 clips for you to choose from, which means you've got to watch 40 clips.
Yep. So have fun. And then on top of it, it drives me nuts because like all the clips will be like super zoomed in on everyone's face. So it's like kind of blurry, and I'm like, oh my God. So now I got to go through and change all of this.
Absolutely. It's, people, influencers can get a bad rap, can't they? But I think they deserve a bit of respect for the amount of work they have to put in to do this stuff.
Oh, 100%. I like, as I've gotten more into social media and doing more of the work, like, you realize how much time it takes, and like you have a different kind of respect for those people that really like their whole life revolves around it.
Totally. I mean, it's it can become very consuming, and not just in respect of what you're doing and creating and posting, but also in terms of, it can be consuming in what response your posts are getting. And, I've thankfully learned to kind of separate what I post from the results that I get, and I just kind of less bothered now than I was previously about that.
Oh yeah. And you have to like, there's so much negativity because anyone can get behind their screen without a profile picture and troll posts, right? So you have all these negative comments and stuff, and you gotta like not let that get to you. And a lot of people let that get to them. So I did a podcast with a friend of mine, and we did it on like dating apps. I've been married for forever. So at this point, like I've never even used a dating app. So I was curious. So I was like, let's talk about it. And then in Vegas on top of that, which Vegas. So and so we did a podcast on it, and like one of the clips I posted was him like giving some advice. And somebody commented on it, and he just got like super depressed, and I was just like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't control the internet.
No, it can be tough at times, and I have this mantra now, which is ignore, delete, block. Is one of those three things.
I laugh it off,
and sometimes all three.
I don't even block anybody anymore. I look at it like, I look at it like such a business transaction that like, if you comment and whether it's negative or not, I don't really care if like 1,000 people think my post sucks, because all you're
Yeah.
doing is bringing traffic to my page. And,
Yes.
like, you're driving the post. So like, thank you.
Absolutely.
And I don't care
Yeah.
what the comments say.
Well, sometimes, this happens quite a lot. Somebody will make a negative comment on one of my posts, and then somebody else, not me, will defend me, or start the argument, or argue back, and this then runs and runs and runs and runs, and from an engagement perspective, that's just
Great.
wonderful, isn't it? And and it actually is quite pleasing to know that other people are sticking up for you as well. So that's a benefit.
There's good and bad in it, but there is no doubt so much work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and much more than anybody would think.
Yeah, it is like a full-time job if you do that. And people think like it's just easy work, but it's not. It's easier to clock into your 9 to 5 and get on your computer and pretend to work for 9 hours. Like, that's way easier. I've done both.
Yeah. I agree. It's it's the amount of thought, the amount of planning, the amount of actual work in terms of editing and creating and filming and etc. Yeah, it's not just time consuming, but it's also you have to spend time and be creative, use your creative resources to to make things that people are going to want to watch.
It's a lot of thought into it. It's a skill. You have to learn. You have to get better. I know when I first posted like a first video of me talking versus now, like I went from just like never talking on social media to making videos talking on social media to a podcast. So
sounds like a natural progression.
Yeah. Apparently, according to my husband, it's just because I like to talk, but
well, if you enjoy doing it, then absolutely.
It works. But it is something you get better at over time. And I'm sure you figured that out too, like getting started and like, just like, what do I do? Let me try this. Let me try that. And then you're like, oh, that worked, and then you progress.
Absolutely. And that's true in everything, whether it be, the way that I train myself, the way that I train other people, the way that I've, in my previous life, the way that I built my career, the social media aspects, you kind of, as long as if you have a degree of emotional detachment from the results, and you're more prepared to just look at it perhaps a little more coldly and take the learning from it, then, that you can get up that learning curve quite quickly.
And I think circling back to like the fitness stuff, like having that foundation to be in that right mindset to be able to do that.
Absolutely. The amount of people that I talk about this too, because, in fact, only this morning, and I know it's morning for you in Vegas, but
got my coffee.
it would have maybe been about midnight. But I was with somebody, and they're doing that. Go on, let's make it 8 repetitions they were going for, and they were struggling to it was a seated chest press that they were using. It's go on, let's get that done. And I do say to people, you really didn't want to do that last repetition, but you did it, and you proved to yourself that you could do it. And that creates, mental connections. That means when there is something else that you really don't want to do, that's completely unrelated to, shifting a weight, that you've got the power to do it. It gives you that strength of mind, that kind of resilience and character that, I am going to do this, and I'm going to make this happen, whatever that might be. And I think that's just such a valuable skill that you pick up in the gym, through fitness, that can apply in all aspects of life.
Have you read David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me book?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, so I actually prefer to listen to it because it's him reading it, And it's like
Right.
you know how he gets like worked up. So he
Yes.
does while he's reading it. But it's super motivating, and it's all about how he had to push through things. So like he'd be running and hurt himself and just keep going, and that you're stronger than you think and that you can do it. And like no matter how many injuries he had, he kept pushing through. And so it's a really good book if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard him on other podcasts. I can't remember whether it was Ed Milet or maybe Lewis Howe. Somebody like that anyway. And I've heard him being interviewed by other people, so I know kind of what you mean.
Yeah, it's the way he talks.
Absolutely, yeah. And but you know what you just said is so true. I think that humans are stronger than they think they are, and when it comes to get into the being really tested, that's when we do come to the fore. Whether that be again in any aspects of life, not just about lifting weights at a gym or running a distance a bit faster or a longer distance.
I don't think people push themselves to their full potential enough.
It's kind of wired, isn't it, though? Because, the biggest thing that we have inherited from, our kind of primal ancestors is security and safety. Back in those days, the number one thing for us was to stay alive. And so, we have in today's world, in today's safe world, we have an overly sensitive, kind of survival instinct, which
Yeah.
is why we get hurt by social media comments, because that we're not going to be eaten by a predator maybe, but we have the same kind of emotional and mental reaction when somebody says, "Oh, I don't like your hair" on social media.
We became weak.
Well, in a way we did, absolutely. But we've made ourselves so comfortable, haven't we? And I'm all for obviously advancement and technology and all of those kind of things. But, there are so many things that are now done for us that we used to have to do ourselves.
Well, we just utilize our time different, right? So like
Exactly.
it's more leisure instead of pushing yourself and doing other things like going to the gym and pushing
Yeah.
yourself, or doing some type of cardio and pushing yourself, or working on other projects, a side business, growing this, whatever, like building relationships. We don't necessarily focus on all of these little things that we can fit in. Instead, we sit in front of the TV and watch Netflix.
Yes. Yes, we do. That's generally life, isn't it?
Yeah. Like everyone's looking forward to that leisure time, to the time they get home from work, they sit down on the couch and they don't move until it's bedtime.
Yeah, and it's look, I put my hands up. That's exactly how I was. When the only difference is I'd have had a glass of wine in my hand, and and I'd have been munching on something that was completely unhealthy. But that's what I used to do. I'd be watching some, probably binge watching some kind of series or something, or watching a sport event or whatever it might be, maybe a film. But that was leisure time. What's really interesting now, actually, is that I rarely watch television. The TV is hardly ever on. The times I will watch television is if there's a big sporting event. So there was the Wimbledon tennis final this weekend, just gone. A soccer event. So there was the Club World Cup final, which was in New Jersey, just recently as well. But I will never just put the television on and kind of flick through the way that I used to until I find something that I might want to watch. I just don't do that anymore.
I
I
think
have
it's
better things to do.
I was just going to say, I think it's finding purpose. So you have purpose that fuels you towards other things. So like, even if I have the TV on, I have my computer in front of me, probably 24/7, always
Yeah,
working on something.
yeah,
Always.
yeah, absolutely. And with the kind of things that we do, you have to be like that. I have to be like that because a lot of the people that I work with are in the USA. So quite often I'll be on calls or messaging with people well into the night in UK time, and I don't have a problem with that. Actually, it helps because back in my corporate job, I used to have to do that then because, I had teams of people that were in across different time zones in the US and South America. So I kind of became accustomed to it with that. So it's not a problem for me now. But it's not a problem for me now because I actually want to do it as well. I love talking to these people. I love, helping these people. I love designing their workouts and putting their meal plans together and all of those kind of things because I know it's going to make a difference to them as long as they do it, obviously. But I know it's going to. I know that it is going to make a key and life changing difference to them. For me, I didn't get fit. I got a life. That's what happened when I made that decision back in January 2019. I decided to live again.
And you've kind of dedicated your career now to helping people that are in their later years, like fix where they're at and be able to live the rest of their life healthy and happy and have purpose.
Absolutely. And I am so passionate about it because people may not have been to the to the same extent of a kind of midlife drift is what I call it that I was, but it happens. There's research that shows it's like 4 out of 5 guys that are feeling discontented and they've lost a lot of their their spark in midlife.
I mean, that's why we use the term like midlife crisis, right? Everyone goes through a midlife crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe I went through a midlife crisis, but it was a bloody good one.
It was worth it because it got you to where you are now.
and a lot cheaper than a red sports car.
That's true. See, I married a car guy, so I'm screwed.
But yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just love doing that, and I do think that I think how I felt to a greater or lesser extent, a lot of people feel, and helping people get out of that is what I'm passionate about doing.
Which is absolutely amazing. So you work kind of around the clock. So how do people find you if they're interested in getting training? And what is your criteria? Like, who do you? So obviously you have a niche. So what's the criteria when it comes to picking a client too?
So the main one is so anybody can use my app. That's kind of with workouts and meal plans, etc., which will help anybody. But when I am personally coaching with somebody, my key criteria is their commitment. So I want
that one's huge.
I want to work with people who want to work, and sometimes I need to be convinced by that. Now, I've been there myself. I've experienced all of these things myself, and I know that enthusiasm and motivation is going to ebb and flow, and that's absolutely fine. But if somebody is, they are really want to get whatever result it is that they want, then that's the kind of person that I want to work with, not somebody who's kind of in the
hymn hall.
They talk the talk, but they don't do the work. That's the kind of person that I don't want to work with, because
how do you defer that? So how do you know person to person, what kind of signs do you look at? Because I've had similar things too. I refuse to work with somebody who's not serious. So I'm curious on how you decide who that is.
So before anybody signs up to either my in-person or my online coaching, I have a conversation with that person, and that's where I will get a good sense. I have enough experience now to get a sense as to whether that person is committed and serious to what they claim to be committed to. Back when I started, I kind of learned through mistakes as well. There was a number of times I actually went to clients and said, look, this isn't working for you. It's not working for me. you're not doing the stuff that we agreed that you would do. And I think it's better that you stop paying me money and that you go and, find somebody else, or, go your own route. And I think that's the right thing to do, by the way. It's, if somebody isn't getting the value because they're not doing the work, which isn't necessarily my fault, then, it's only fair to just let them, go elsewhere. And, sometimes that jolts people into saying, no, I will be serious. I'm committed to this, and etc. And they do turn it around. But that experience, I think, has helped me to ascertain whether somebody is really, going to do this or not when I have that conversation with them. So yeah, that's the main way. And sometimes, rarely now, thankfully, you get that wrong, and you have to have the kind of conversation with the client to say, look, do you really want this to work? Because if you do, then this is what we need to do.
It's a tough conversation, but those tough conversations are necessary.
Well, exactly. And, we can't go through life. This again comes back to, the resilience we build in the gym, isn't it? It's and the strength that we build in the gym. We can't go through life avoiding, anything that's a bit hard. So, it's better to have that hard conversation, and, everybody ends up winning as a result.
Yeah. It sucks to like initiate the conversation, but once you have it, everyone feels better afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're doing the best for that person and for yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Is there anything else you want to cover? I think we've started from start to finish, so I'm trying to figure out where to fill in the blanks.
No, I think one thing I would just say, though, is, if you are, if you're watching or listening to this and you're in your 40s and you are thinking my life's a bit of a mess, then, just firstly be aware you're no different to most other people in your age group. And secondly, if you do take control, make some decisions, you can make a difference. You can make a big difference. And ultimately, whatever it is that you do, whatever your life circumstances are, you can improve it massively simply by moving your body and eating better.
1,000%. I couldn't have said that better. Well, I thank you so much for coming on here. I'm going to finish this, but I'm going to talk to you afterwards. So,
okay.
But I will share your page, your website, and everything in the description for the podcast, so everyone can find you. We'll also have clips that'll get posted that you'll get tagged in. So, thank you again for coming on, and I appreciate you telling your story.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
All right. Bye, guys.